when we can break free of those ideas of what my compassion threshold is, and give ourselves the benefit of the doubt that maybe I can be a whole lot more than what I gave myself credit, then that exchange becomes magnificently potentially enlightening, and those moments become life-changing, actually revolutionary to the kind of life that we want to live. Because based on those direct experiences, our whole belief system will shift.
Hello and welcome to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, the host of the podcast, a yoga and meditation teacher and philosophy lover. Each week you will hear eye-opening interviews with the different teachers of the Yandara Yoga Institute, located in beautiful Baja, Mexico, along with other teachers that pass through here. This life-changing knowledge shared through authentic, heartfelt communication will help you live a happier, more fulfilled, and connected life. Let's dive in. Welcome to the first episode of Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, and I'm so excited to finally share this project. One of my biggest inspirations to start this podcast was my guest today, my teacher, Christopher Perkins. Christopher co-founded Yandara Yoga Institute almost 20 years ago and has trained many generations of yoga teachers from across the globe. Christopher had a very interesting upbringing growing up in the SKMC Meditation Center in Virginia, where he started meditating at the age of 4. And over the years, he continued to study many different philosophies and practices of awareness, including Qigong, wilderness meditation, also known as Vision Quest, Vipassana meditation, and Tibetan Buddhist meditation, just to name a few. He has studied with great teachers, starting with Sant Darshan Singh, Dharma Mitra, Guru Das, Shiva Ray, John Milton, and many more. What I loved about his teachings is that they are always rooted in connecting to the presence and flow of life in such an intuitive way. He is able to see deeper into what is going on and approaches each moment as a student, yet full of knowledge and compassion. His workshops that usually turned into fascinating conversations about life were one of my favorite parts of the training. And as I was thinking, how can I keep learning from him and the other amazing teachers that teach here at Yandara, I thought a podcast could be a really amazing way to extend their teachings outside the boundaries of Yandara's beautiful grounds here in Baja, Mexico. So here we are. Welcome to the podcast, Christopher.
I'm so pleasure. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here. And you know, when we first sat down to talk about this vision and this concept that you brought up, I remember thinking that this was a missing piece, and it made so much sense. So thank you. I just know that there are many people out there that are curious, just like we are, and a way to connect with them through the podcast, I think, is a brilliant idea. So thank you for starting this.
My definite pleasure.
Amazing. Yeah.
So I thought we could start with a conversation that we had a few days ago, because it was really insightful and interesting for me. And I think it's something that every one of us deals with, and it could be a really interesting topic to delve into. So the topic is these beliefs and behavioral patterns that we take on as children. And they are kind of, as children, we see them as the way that we should be in the world in order to be safe. But then we end up taking them with us to adulthood. And although we might know better, they still end up really governing our thoughts and our actions in how we move in the world. So
exactly.
Could you talk about that, please?
You know, there have been so many people trying to gain spiritual insights. You know, they come to the trainings and they want to have better yoga practice or deeper meditations, and obviously in order to make their lives a bit more clear, fulfilling, however they want to be happy, you know. So we get into some practices and we look at some techniques, and inevitably hours later, after the technique, after the practice, they feel like, but I'm still struggling with, how am I going to bring this home? What am I going to do to make this, this new experience a normal for me? And so what I've found over the years, when we investigate what is the mechanism that provides kind of it gives an opportunity for us to almost like recreate a previous identity. Even if we've had a very profound experience of who we are, even if we've been able to dive very, very deeply in a particular moment and have clear insight, there's this very strong tendency to just revert. And I've been exploring what that mechanism is, because for me, success is about long-standing actual evolution, like noticing when the pieces are falling into place more easily, or when our lives seem to be in a flow state. So when I've questioned people and asked what's beneath that, which is a very common sort of inquiry question, is what's beneath that? Inevitably, we end up finding some emotion. And the emotion is like a little trail of breadcrumbs. So we like to take advantage of that. And the emotion of being frustrated, for example, or afraid of the future moment when I will experience the same struggle, find myself in the same difficult interaction with my partner or my boss or family member. So this is the main reason that I got really interested in this, is watching myself go into very, very deep experiences, and then watch my patterns of how I identify with a certain perspective or a certain role or a certain belief, and being able to identify those in myself has made it very clear that most people seeking spirituality that I've met, most, I would say, are actually they're seeking a form of emotional maturity, actually. And spirituality has been a way to gain perspective, of course, on this life, and have less attachments to how we maybe demand it to be, because those demands cause a lot of suffering for us. Get attached, and then disappointments and obsessions and things like that. So the most important piece that I've found is that when we evolve in our early age of life, we normalize the environment that we're in by creating a belief system that accepts and includes that maybe a disappointing relationship, or a very challenging emotional interaction, or it could be a long-standing relationship of a parent that doesn't really recognize the child as being good enough just as they are, but rather waiting for them to achieve something quite recognizable in order to justify giving attention, or really, really showing them affection. Oh, you got an A on your report card. Very classical, kind of, you got a high grade. Okay, then we get to have fun. Yeah. If you don't get a high grade, then I don't really put myself out for you as a parent or as a guardian. Yeah. So we have this kind of emotional ransom going on, and these very common normal practices in a family dynamic create a belief system, and then it becomes a structure for our personality to make it in the world. So that person who is held very strictly to accomplishment, and not just accomplishment, but real, like, recognizable achievement, measurable achievements, are the prerequisite for happiness. Right. Because I'm only happy as a child when I have my loving parents or my guardians really showing up for me. So I immediately equate success with some level of contentment, fulfillment, happiness, safety, particularly as we are wired to notice the mood that our parents or our guardians are in order to gauge whether or not we're safe. Because if our guardians are sort of finding us unworthy of their attention, if you think about how we would have been back in the Stone Age, for example, when we were evolving consciousness of community and culture, there would be a real threat to being left out. If I'm on the outskirts of the circle of that tight-knit tribe or community, then I would legitimately be food for a tiger, for example, if I was left behind. So it's been wired into us for many years, and you can see that we will do everything in our power to stay on good terms, like really good terms with our caregivers, so that we stay in their fold. So we will be accepted by them as part of the community, as part of that tribe. So it's literally a survival mechanism for us to normalize whatever it means to make them happy with us, because that's when we know we'll be either given food, nourishment, or be included and kept into the pack, held dear in that community or tight-knit family. So it's normal and natural for a child to literally change their whole outlook on the world based on watching the mannerisms of their parents, based on whatever their actions are. So if I do really good in school, parents get happy, I get a reward.
Right.
Later on in life, that becomes a personality trait, and someone would describe that individual as being driven, highly successful, right? And then we see these power, not power hungry necessarily, but power driven individuals who, if you would investigate very sensitively into their history, I wouldn't be that surprised if you found one or more of the parents were quite strict with when and how they received some affection or some form of real connection.
Yeah.
And I think 9 times out of 10, we'd find a very clear correlation between what they were taught is a deserving person of love and what wasn't a deserving person of love. And so these little belief systems then frame a personality for our following adult lives to unfold.
Yeah, that makes so much sense with the society that we live in, that really we equate, like you said, we equate success with happiness. This need in our society to achieve and be great and have these external successes in order to get the love that we naturally deserve, and relating that to this reward system that we had as children. Then when we got a good grade, we got attention. When we behave the way that we should behave, we got an award for it. And when we didn't, we got reprimanded.
Exactly. I think it's so important to recognize when we didn't get it. What did we get? Did we get to were we told then we couldn't enjoy life?
Sent to the room.
Exactly. Told to be quiet, go to the room, disconnected, isolated, alienated. All the things that would trigger a survival mechanism to shut down and create tension in the body. And later on in life, those tensions then manifest as this ease in some form or another that we want to avoid, either disassociate from through a lot of mental activity, or make some really strong personality commitments, these subconscious strong personality commitments that would make sure that we don't ever go to those places. Like really we create a personality identity that really works in society to make sure we don't ever have to deal with those. And entertainment at all of our fingertips basically makes that very easy as well, because we can present our personality on social media and we can create whatever reality that we think is going to lead us to that position of success. Or this is a very interesting time that we're in, actually, for supporting that deluded mind that thinks that success in certain forms is the prerequisite for deep and lasting fulfillment. It's interesting.
Very. And I think for me it connects with what our whole society is going through in terms of the treatment of women, because what you said is that we're trained to get the approval of our authority figures. And then so many women, also men, I think, are in positions where they really want to be approved of by their teachers, their boss, their leaders. And then they confuse that to be something romantic. And there is a possibility for the person that is in power to take advantage of that.
Of course. And one observation that we can make is that when someone strives in a very sort of overt way for power or some role of, if there's and if there's an internal motivation to get that power position in order for hopefully a promise of happiness or a promise of contentment, oh, and now I've got this certain status, then we can see that there's a motivation out of insecurity or a question of, am I worthy without that? Do I deserve happiness without that? Mm-hmm. And if one doesn't address the underlying situation of the whatever insecurity or lack of self-love, lack of self-awareness, then the position, of course, becomes it's like your own bubble, living in one's own. We think, well, Putin, for example. I know this is not a political conversation, but when someone is so surrounded by an environment that's just an echo chamber, then all kinds of delusions can arise, and we see that numerous situations, with power roles.
Numerous.
And so we, of course, with power comes a lot of responsibility to know the motivations, I would say, behind all of that action that come out of that power role. And everyone's powerful. Everyone's infinitely powerful. But of course, the question of how we use it comes up, particularly when we are in a role in society where that power is far-reaching. And then it becomes, I think, highlighted, because it's everywhere. It's in, even you say this may be a subjugation of the feminine, the female archetype in a household that no one hears about. The same thing happens in the power differential between, the husband or the man of the house, or the role that is seen as the power position, and a woman who, for whatever reason, finds herself in that situation. That whole dynamic is still there, but we don't really talk about it so much unless it's on the stage of, like the television news stories that really illustrate the people that are affecting wide audiences. So it doesn't have to be just because it's in the macrocosm, in this big spotlight, that's the only place that it exists. It's really, it's innate in the individual who sees themselves as less than. And if they see themselves as less than, there's this immediate sort of seeking to who I can get above, who I can control in order to become more, a little bit more than I believe I am. Which we see, the belief of how much or what I deserve, or how valuable I am, comes from those, again, original family dynamics, And so if one feels that their life isn't valued, if the child is seen as just, an annoyance, for example, or gets in the way, or is somehow taking attention from the work, or taking attention from the whatever else, the parent might really rather be doing based on their sort of weakness to a certain thing. Maybe it's either work or another person or whatever. We have numerous layers of belief around how valuable we are within our own self, not in society, but literally just our own existence.
Yeah.
How much value is here before I perform anything, before I succeed in anything, before I provide a service. That is there as a sort of threshold, I call it a threshold. It's like a point at which I see myself as not being enough, like a certain point. Okay, yeah. I'm not enough for this situation. I'm not good enough to deserve that. Yeah. I'm not good enough to deserve that situation, so I'll sabotage it. And so if I cross my threshold in my daily life, my inner threshold of what I deserve, based on my original belief systems, then no matter what, if I haven't addressed that original belief system, I will make some decision that undermines that particular win, you might say, in that situation, whether that's with a partner, whether that's with a certain security or a job situation, or a certain environment that's, maybe more pleasurable or more successful in some actually meaningful way. But I may not believe that that's something I ultimately deserve underneath all of it. And I've noticed that in myself. When I look at situations, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then I watch myself, and I'll start to do things, if I'm not careful. I'll do things that'll make it become a struggle. or make it become a little more challenging and then not sustainable.
Yeah.
And then I have to go back in, okay, tend to my little guy.
Yeah.
Are you really not worthy of that? And I actually have a relationship, a conversation, and an actual interaction that's going to reframe the maybe difficult situation with a bit more love around it, a bit more acceptance. And so this is actually one of the most important pieces here, is recognizing when we're sabotaging the life that we've been given because of a limiting belief.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful what you said, and I would love to really dive into that. What do we actually do? Because a lot of time, I definitely have seen that in myself as well. When we expand, we work on ourselves, and then we actually are able to expand and manifest.
Right.
And then come these sabotaging behaviors that really stem from this lack of self-worth, right? We don't really know what our worth is. So I would love to talk about how does one realize what their actual worth is and work on having that as something innate and not something, because a lot of times we might know in our mind, but then we don't really believe it. And then of course the actions don't match. And also you kind of touched on inner child work. So maybe you can expand on that.
Yeah, we're adults here. That's the whole point. We are adults, but we act like children in some ways. We act the way that we learned was working.
And these beliefs were made in childhood.
Exactly. Yeah. And there are some systems that will support some ancient yogic and Vedic philosophies that support, as well as Western psychology, the finding that the most formative years actually go backwards from the most formative experience around birth, even in utero, where we don't even register things as visual memory. We're just energetic experiences.
Oh, wow.
We're just experiencing vibration or emotion, and we don't actually log it in a context or a structure that we can later access easily. We can access it, of course, but those are the most formative because we don't even put walls around those experiences. We don't even put people necessarily
limits of visual.
Exactly. So we're actually able to create real universal beliefs, like beliefs about what the universe is and what my part in that is. So very, very fundamental existential questions live at that level of subconscious before the visual memories start, because that's when we're quite, you'd say, like unburdened, by the ego and by the identity of I am here, you're there, and all this sort of social play that we do. So then it becomes less and less and less and less in terms of our vulnerability to our environment. So we become more and more and more established as the years go on. So the most vulnerable, the most, you might say, fresh canvas, and that means if I'm a fresh canvas, one stroke is a massive effect. One brush stroke can mean the whole rest. It affects quite a lot of what comes next.
Yeah.
So then once that one stroke is made, you could say that would be it could be a traumatic event, like, oh, mom or dad was unavailable for the first whatever, mom was sick after birth. And there it is. There's the message. I'm not quite, as a child, we can't articulate it. But as an adult, we can look back and say, what is actually going on, as a sense of fundamental question mark around, am I safe? Am I safe here? Or something like that. And that could be from early trauma about having to get surgery, or, physical illnesses, dysfunction in family, being witness to violence, or any kind of thing that would lead us to question safety, because that's what is ruling those first months of our lives, is safety, survival.
Right.
So as we go older, we have more and more context, more and more structure, and the belief systems are easier and easier to dismantle. So the further we go back, when I say easier, what I mean, they're easier to recognize. They're a little bit more, you can articulate them. So if it's very, very early, it becomes more like an existential thing. And later on, then it becomes more of a social or more of a psychological, emotional beliefs that we can actually pinpoint through phrases and things like that. So what is this inner child work? I like to call it inner child play, because children like to play. They like to play a lot, you know. They don't get much out of the idea of having to work. That's not how they gain strength in their character. They gain strength in their explorative curiosity and the joy that comes with having senses and being able to interact and exchange. So when I personally invest some time, it looks like using a real life interaction. Like, for example, if I go out to check on the center, what's going on over there, and I had previously made some specific plan for something to get done, and I have a team of people who are supposed to do it, for example, you know, like a crew. And I go over there, and if it's not done, the first thing that comes up is, well, it depends on my mood, actually, what the first thing is. But in the worst case scenario, the first thing that comes up is, how is this possible? You know, kind of like disbelief. Like, I was so clear.
Yeah.
How can this be? You know, like this frustration almost. Like, if I really get into it and let it, if it's really serious, like costing a lot of time or energy or money or emotional struggle, people getting mixed up in stuff because of something not getting done the way that I hoped. Then I can use that moment and say, okay, what's beneath this? First of all, I'm not going to be a very successful leader in that moment because I'm triggered. I feel powerless. I feel misunderstood. I'm afraid that my failing will lead to suffering, or it won't work out some way for somebody, myself or other. So then I investigate the actual feeling emotion, which is but let them. So I just have to stop. Like, let them keep going with whatever they're doing, or just say, hey guys, we're going to take a break. And the process for me looks like very clearly recognizing what's the emotion. And the first label would be almost like one word, as best I can. One word emotion. Frustration. Okay, like one word, boom, frustration. Now I let that simmer in my own body for a moment. If I can get beneath, and I believe in the practice, so I can get beneath the story of I'm right here. You know, I'm right. They're wrong. They should have done this. I've practiced enough in my own psychology to recognize that if I think that I'm right, then I've missed the mark. Because I know that I'm not right. I know that everything is out as it needs to be, and my thinking that I'm right and it's wrong is a misperception. That's just a philosophical view I've chosen to take on because it puts me back in the seat of experience and growth rather than ego and projection.
Yeah, I'm right, you're wrong.
Right, that whole dance, exactly. It's like a waste of time. So I get clear. Okay, it's no one right or wrong. I have a feeling, you know, something going on.
So this is just for me to understand.
Yeah.
This is really a belief that you kind of had a moment that you decided, I am not right. And then whenever you arrive at a situation like this, an interaction where there is difference between how you see and the other side sees things, you really have made this decision already in the past that there is no right and wrong. It's an opportunity to learn and grow and evolve.
Yeah, you know, because everyone's doing their best. No one does anything for any other reason than because they think that it will work out. So if I say, well, you're wrong because I sent a message that was very clear and like this, I make them wrong. You know, I'm right and they're wrong. Unfortunately, that's based on a belief that it should have been, that they should have done it differently. You know, they should have read it more clearly. And I can even point that at myself. Oh, I should have written it better. I should have called and make sure they got them. You know, the whole should game. Yeah. And then I don't remember who it was in my past that just said a very simple and very sweet statement that, it's not so nice to should on other people or should on ourselves, so it's kind of gross to do that. And the way I get myself out of that is to remember that I actually don't have the view right now. I definitely don't have the view of the universally observable and unfallible law of cause and effect. It does not fail. There will be a cause and there will be an effect. And that result or that effect is the manifest reality that I experience, that we all experience as now, as the how it is. So for me to posit in any amount that it should be different than the way that it is literally arguing with the entire universal law, the only unfallible law that will be sustained until the end of existence. Cause effect is a scientifically proven fact.
Yeah.
And so if I can even scientifically or whatever remember that if I am at this stance of I'm right and you're wrong, I'm already deluded. I'm already lost in an egoic state. So it's not going to be anything other than, okay, maybe I can prove it, right? That, yeah, I was right. And you deserve whatever then punishment or feeling of being wrong. This whole thing.
Which, what good does that have anyway?
Yeah, exactly. I guess to build me up, the me that likes to be right. And then and then I get to look at them as whatever. It's just it's a waste of time, energy, unfortunate circumstances of emotional. It's actually toxic inside of me because I'm arguing against the universe. And that creates friction. And friction within the body, it manifests as dis-ease, emotional turmoil, or things like that.
Yeah.
So the flow state is in agreement with reality, which is that it's like this. I don't have to actually condone it or expect that it should happen like that again, because my response to it is actually what I'm interested in. How do I respond? Because that's what is the cause for the next reality. And I am that creative power that is manifesting as well as you, as well as everyone involved. So then I can become more empowered rather than power over someone, that I'm right and you're wrong. We identify with the fact that we are just a creative power. And then we can go into the deep truths, which is, why would I have created this situation again? That I feel frustrated, powerless, that I feel that my best intention was misunderstood, or whatever it is. So personally, that's something that comes up for me if I investigate my personality's triggers, or whatever you call it, those moments, is misunderstood. I feel misunderstood again, and that's frustrating, and da. So then the work is very clear. I find the emotion frustration. I close my eyes, and I open to the possibility that there's a version of myself that was so overwhelmed with frustration, that was so powerless in that moment to get what it wanted, that it stamped into my subconscious a belief that life involves being misunderstood, or that I don't deserve to really have clear flowing interactions with the most important things in my life. So it's just a belief that life is going to be a struggle.
We take it personally.
We totally take it personally, and we have to, because our existence depends on us surviving that situation.
Yeah.
So if my frustration of trying to get what I want has to do with love, just basic love, attention, like a child crying, for example.
Yeah.
They're either uncomfortable because they've gone to the bathroom in their diaper. They're legitimately hungry. Generally, I'm talking pretty young kids, when they're just screaming for what is true for them.
Yeah. Don't have words yet.
Yeah, exactly. Like, fresh power. I can't communicate, but I am not happy. Like, this is not working out. And that pain translates into a sound, and then that sound, hopefully will affect the environment. But if it doesn't affect the environment in a way that I hoped, then the feelings of frustration will start to anchor as, this is life. You see, then it starts to become a pattern of, okay, life is just disappointing, or life is just about this, or life is about, or women are untrustworthy, or men are untrustworthy, or, this, or whatever the belief might be that could be lingering in there. So the point is, when I close my eyes, I'm open to the idea that there's some point in my life, originally very young usually, if it's that kind of like, it could be like when I was 5 or 10, pretty young. It could be when I was 1.
Yeah.
That this sense of being frustrated, not able to communicate, and that it doesn't work out the way I hoped. So that's the seed that has sprouted into a personality that might look like, let's see, in its like full-blown manifestation, you'd say, oh, he's a tough boss. You don't want to get on his bad side. Okay?
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means that they have accumulated enough of a, like reputation or whatever, that people recognize that they have a short fuse when it comes to not getting their way.
Mm-hmm.
And they've projected that challenge inside of themselves of being misunderstood or not being in control. They've sort of projected it onto the people that they can control in a way. And when they don't get their way, you get fired or you get demoted or whatever. And so they get recognized as someone who's tough boss. Okay?
Yeah, you get a punishment.
Yeah, you get punished. Exactly. So the personality of the daily adult life is usually indicative of very clear moments in history or long-standing mild grade, sort of making it through. Like, we just make do with this. Okay, I only see my dad for 2 days a week. I just make do. I normalize it. And then later in life, my belief is men aren't really trustworthy. They don't really show up when you need them. They're just kind of there whenever it's convenient.
Yeah, and we don't even notice that that's our belief sometimes.
We never do.
Yeah.
Until we wake up to this practice of self-inquiry. Pretty much always blaming the other person. Oh, that was a poor choice in relationship. I was dating the wrong guy.
Incompatibility.
Yeah, it's all these things.
We just don't go together. Yeah.
Right, exactly. We don't usually check and see what is it that I'm actually doing to manifest these conditions of disappointment or of seeing that guy and auditioning to say there's 10 people in a room. Our subconscious is very wise. It wants to seek harmony all the time. It's flow. Nature's flow.
Yeah.
So our deep subconscious knows that flow is the only and most successful path of life. So it'll say, I have a belief system here. It's outdated. It's been hanging on for about 20 years now. It's outdated.
In a good case.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully not longer.
Yeah.
But I need to find a way to unstick this belief from my personality. So let's bring that person, say I'm the subconscious speaking, let's bring that person back home to reassess, is this still functioning? Does this belief still make sense? Because it's going to keep running in the background, just like any background running app on your device, until you go in and actually check and see, do I still want this to be running? And the way that it gets our attention is it figures out where our attention is going. So if I become very motivated and my attention is always going to my work, my subconscious will pretty quickly realize, okay, I just got to get this person into a work environment that will make them feel the way that I need to get them to feel, because that's how they felt when this belief was actually created. And if they can check and see, does that feeling still show as valid? Is it still a reasonable feeling to have in adult life? Or is it outdated? Because how'd you feel when you were that age? Well, you felt what? Disappointment, or I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, life sucks, men aren't trustworthy. I can only get what I want if I really struggle for it. Whatever that situation.
Life's hard.
Life is hard.
Yeah.
It can be that simple.
Yeah.
I don't deserve success unless I really have to fight for it. Or, whatever those pieces will be. So the point is that the subconscious is so wise that it will give us a hormonal response to make us attracted to a situation or a person or an environment that is similar enough, or could potentially be similar enough, to the original environment.
And why would that happen?
Well, it's happening because the subconscious knows that this is not a really great operating system. It's outdated, okay, the belief system. But the only way to assess whether or not we can replace it is to get attention to look at it and see, does that still hold up?
Yeah.
Does this belief still make sense?
So creating an uncomfortable situation that we either numb it, which is what a lot of us do,
Right.
or are forced to actually look at it and deal with it and then reassess if it still fits who we want to be and what we actually believe as an adult.
Perfect.
Hey, I'm quickly interrupting the episode to extend an invitation. If you are interested in deepening into any of the subjects we talk about on the podcast, we offer many different experiences on our beautiful grounds here in Baja, Mexico. From 9-day modules such as sound healing and yoga nidra to breath and meditation, as well as 200 or 300-hour yoga teacher trainings and many different shorter retreats. Check out our website yandara.com to see all the information about the different experiences. Let's get back to the episode.
So those opportunities of disappointment, of frustration, of feeling victimized, those opportunities will arise again and again and again and again until a part of us recognizes this as a pattern.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not about the person. Maybe it's about my belief about what I deserve in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because they met the next, we broke up. I saw them connect with somebody else. They have an amazing relationship. He doesn't treat her that way. What's up with that? Well, I needed him to treat me that way because that's the way my father made me feel when I was forming my beliefs about men and relationship. So we create these very reflective realities for ourselves to have knowledge of what we might have been going through and have until that moment been unable to recognize. So very intelligent, actually, our subconscious, using our hormonal systems to make us get very excited when we see someone. We fall in love like that. Oh my gosh, he's the person, she's the one. And hopefully we trust that. We let ourselves get involved. We let ourselves get vulnerable. And once we let ourselves get vulnerable, then we become available for them to do that thing. What is that thing going to be? They're going to do whatever it is that helps us to get a feeling.
Yeah.
And that feeling will be the breadcrumbs that trail back home to the original seed of belief, of limiting belief.
And it manifests as our blame. You're not doing this, you're doing that.
They should be. Yeah, they should be like this.
It should be.
Yep. You told me you'd be home by 6, so why didn't you come home by 6? You said, so you're wrong. You said you're going to be.
I'm right.
You're wrong. You said you're going to be home by 6. You've done this a million times. And so what is that? Well, that's feeling. So if someone says they're going to do something and they don't, that's betrayal.
Yeah.
So there's something that's set up and it doesn't follow through.
Yeah.
I've been betrayed. My trust has been betrayed. So that would be the underlying sort of condition to allow the inner world an opportunity to show that original condition is our practice of inner child work, to say, what was that original condition that warranted a belief that life is about betrayal and no one's really trustworthy anymore, especially people that I love.
And then you're kind of looking for the situations, you're like waiting for it to happen. You're like, I knew it. Like people aren't trustworthy.
Totally. And then we pat ourselves on the back for being right again.
Yeah.
I'm right. You weren't trustworthy.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
When you look for something, it usually shows up.
And hopefully we can recognize the opportunity is always there. Doesn't matter how dramatic or how subtle it is, we can find a way to evolve through it. So you don't have to hit the bottom. You don't have to have a monumental devastation in order to access those pieces. But if we are pushing and pushing and pushing, the volume, the sheer drama around that experience has to be far greater to get our attention.
Yeah. Okay,
so the distance we've traveled from that link to the flow state or the update availability every day, update. If we're not updating every day, naturally by being in a flow state, by being presence itself, by being presence, by identifying with I'm awake, I'm alive. If we haven't decided upon that unique state as our identity, then we're basically operating on these outdated structures. And so when we have this opportunity to learn to go in, it's not about going in and fixing ourselves or getting rid of something or getting bad energy out of ourselves. It's about recognizing a certain mode of being that is like a relationship, a healthy relationship, which has to do with responsibility, which has to do with letting the other person's experience be as important as my own. And in that, I let my inner child show up in my life, like as though I was actually a father. Not go in there to get rid of, fix, and get over a child. They'll feel that. If I do the meditation on the inner child and I'm going in there and I visualize a little guy and he knows that I'm just there, to kind of get over this thing, there's not going to be a lot of actual connection. It's going to be skepticism. I'm going to be frustrated. He's going to be holding back. And I'm using my visualization. I'm using my power of creativity to create an internal dialogue, an internal relationship, so that my subconscious becomes conscious. And I've actually inhabited the depth of my own psyche. So I'm not operating on hidden agendas, or I'm not operating out of habit, something that's because I always do it. Why do I do it? Well, because we've always done it this way. It's just what I do. It's who I am. Have you heard that before? Someone say?
So many times.
It's just who I am.
Yeah. Deal with it. Take it or leave it.
Exactly. So, of course, there's a great value in being willing to hold ourselves in that unconditionally sort of accepted state. Like, okay, this is how I am.
Yeah.
There's a value in acknowledging that I'm like this. Okay, yes, we want to be able to accept the personality and the traits that come along with our history and all of our challenges without getting incessantly attached to bettering the personality. Okay, I'm not suggesting that we should be always trying to fix our personality, but rather creating space for the personality to truly shine through. Because our personality has been limited. That's all. We're just giving more opportunity for the truest version of ourselves to have more space. Limited by these beliefs, these patterns. Yeah, exactly. And so the way we show up to each other, the way we show up to our jobs and our friends and our family, then starts to show more humanity and less limitation or less, projection or whatever it might be. Stuff that we just normalize. Society normalizes trying to be right quite often, and we rally behind people that are up in arms against someone because we also want to be right some level. So we can recognize that there's a lot of time spent in just trying to prove ourselves, maybe. That my perspective is more valid than yours or whatever. In arguments, I'm talking about when it's challenging. So, you're sitting here, and we're sitting here. If you're watching this, you're sitting here wondering, well, how do I apply this? What do I actually do? That was my question. So it's very simple. You've got to be willing, first of all, to humble our view of ourselves, to recognize that it's actually about me first. Because if I'm not in connection and communion with this whole living organism experience, then I'm only giving you a percentage. And so that interaction is automatically going to be disappointing in some way because you're only getting a percentage, a certain sliver of my character, my humanity. So I check and commit very clearly to, I want all of me here. I don't want anything subconscious and hiding. I want you to have an experience of me, not me. And also to experience ourselves. Yes. Totally. So and it's a blessing to be able to experience ourselves because we're a radiant manifestation of the miracle of life. Why wouldn't we be enamored to get to know ourselves? And I think about a little innocent child. So if there's a lot of difficult trauma, we can relate to ourselves in a way that's at a distance, a safe distance, because sometimes we need to approach with deep respect, a little bit of patience. So if I go in and I visualize a little child, I let the emotion, and I'll give you a really super specific tip. When I have a feeling in my body of frustration, I let it be in my body. And I really check if I'm still lost in thought of thinking about who's to blame. I just take time out on that, because that's not going anywhere.
Okay, yeah.
Just done. Okay, thank you, situation. Thank you, life. You've done your job. Now it's time for me to get to the real juice, like the stuff that really matters.
Yeah. And anyway, we can't really control other people and what they do.
Of course not. And
just us.
Exactly. And so when we can recognize that we have the commitment to ourselves, then we can let the emotion be in our body. Pure frustration. I've just got frustration, for example, or pain or fear or doubt. All the gamut of human experience can be here in the body rather than projected. So then I step back. So here's the tip. I close my eyes and I actually literally visualize this place of my experience of pain or frustration or whatever as staying where it is, and I start stepping backwards in space. And I leave it right there. I'm not trying to change it. I'm not trying to fix it. I just give it space. Super duper important.
Yeah.
It's very, very easy for us to think, I want to get rid of this. I don't want to have this feeling. I want to get over it.
Yeah.
I want to transform this stuff as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way. Gravity is a beautiful power in our world. We have gravity holding us on the planet. We have the power of gravity keeping all of our, solar system in place. It manifests throughout the entire galaxy. That gravity is it's a fundamental law of attraction. So if we have what I call emotional gravity, it means it's getting our attention. It's pulling us down.
Yeah. And
we don't want to go down. I don't want to go down there. Down there. I don't want to go down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we were never taught that, there's gold down there too. Or maybe we've been taught that, but we've never given the actual tools to navigate that space. And so by concentration, by practice of mindfulness, breath awareness, all these things, we can gain more and more focus. And that can start to give us confidence to go in with a light of awareness and allow that visualization to stabilize, to give it space to become a form. It could be a kitten or a puppy. It's got to be innocent, though. That's why I say kitten or puppy, or a young child, or a kid. In their innocence, we are woken up from our selfish state of blame or judgment or victim, whatever mind. We're woken up into compassion, into our adult nervous system that's kind of wider in its capacity. It's communally conscious. When we have communal consciousness, then we can see, okay, who's suffering right now? Because we're only as fast as our slowest man kind of thing. This is like genetic coding. If someone's having a hard time, we need to get them ready for anything.
Yeah.
So if I see a young child or a little kitten or a little puppy in my visualization, a biological shift occurs and my whole psyche changes from identifying as a child, which is what can I get? Because that's appropriate. As a child, I need to get in order to survive and to establish. But as an adult, it flips. I'm actually fulfilled by providing. And that's why we feel so good holding the door for somebody when they're struggling with 2 bags or whatever. We feel immediate freedom, balance, fulfillment, presence, clarity, happiness, all the great stuff you can pile onto that moment of just holding the door for someone.
Because you're lifting up somebody weak, in parentheses, in the society.
Exactly. Yeah. You're showing up as a responsible part of your society. In that moment, if this person gets their food, we are better as a team. It's an inborn natural impulse.
Yeah, we forget that a lot of times, though.
Oh, it's trained out of us because that makes society stronger. And history shows that when society is strong, those in power get threatened. So when we're distracted and face down, for example, we won't even notice there's someone struggling with their bag over there. We just have this incredibly important thing to check and see how many likes I've gotten on something. So
I'm thinking of ourselves and make America great again.
Well,
like thinking of
sure.
me or us as opposed to all of us,
Right.
the separation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a feeling. It's gotta be a real thing inside of us that's moving us. And in
Yeah.
Buddhism, it's called choiceless awareness. Choiceless awareness means I don't have a choice. It just makes sense to do this now. And it threatens so many people to hear this concept of choiceless awareness. It's like, I don't want that. I want choice.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, if you think about it really seriously, when you see, and I've used this analogy because it's so poignant, if you see a child falling, like out of their chair, like a little high chair, what do?
You run to get them.
Yeah. You go and hopefully catch the baby before it hits the ground. Would you consider that something that you had to think about?
No.
Make a choice in that situation, or whether or not you wanted to get involved in that situation? Or
no.
Right? It's not that. It's an actual choiceless awareness, because that is a moment that we extend beyond our individual egoic self to say, we need help.
Yeah.
Something's going to cause pain. Suffering is something we share as a community, as a people.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can reduce even just one potential, second of suffering, why wouldn't I?
Mm-hmm.
And this is our awakened adult consciousness. So when we can look inside and translate this interaction from, I need to fix this situation, to, I'm just here to provide support for suffering, to dissipate or whatever it is, rather than trying to fix. It's a very subtle difference.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to fix. I'm going in there to hold space for what needs to be presented to me. Then I can respond. Okay, what is the need? It's very different than I need to get rid of the situation. I need to get, I don't want to feel this anymore. I don't want to see the kid crying anymore. It's very common. Stop crying. Fix the situation.
Yeah.
Don't cry like this. And so if we go in there with any kind of idea that to change it or to fix, that would be counterproductive, to say the least.
Yeah.
So in order to really respond, I suggest going in, closing the eyes, seeing a little child or a little puppy, and being moved by choiceless, immediate, and compassionate attention. And it's different than trying to get it to change.
Right.
It's responding from a place of maturity.
So accepting what is instead of resisting it.
But not complacency. It's immediate action based on acceptance, yes. That, there's something happening. I'm honored to be able to respond, because by responding, I've woken up the latent adult maturity that has always been waiting to guide me and to fulfill my life moment by moment by moment. And so those are those precious moments to the inner child where their belief system gets put up for negotiation. Is it true that I'm not lovable? Actually, if I love that child, that belief becomes paper thin. If I see the child being abused, and I go in and I take the child in my visualization, I'm powerful in that visualization. I can do anything. And if I realize the child needs to be taken to safety, if there's an actual harmful situation, and I scoop the child up, and I don't get so concerned about who's to blame. I just see this, the need, boom, gone, out, safe. Then the subconscious, because we're just working in the subconscious, using visualization to access subconscious beliefs. And so we shine light on that situation to say, well, maybe it's not true that you don't deserve protection, because I'm showing you right now that you're worthy of being noticed, honored, believed, and protected, for example. And just by showing up that way, we don't even have to figure it out. The inner world changes, and all of a sudden it becomes a beautiful place to be for that child, because we've shown up and added our awareness to it of what's working and what's not. And in that intimate moment, that very vulnerable and very challenging moment, really, because we often are comfortable in our existence. So that level of intimacy challenges our selfish daily life. And so if we're able to and willing to, in that moment, get free of our own edges, our own kind of compassion threshold where I'll give you $1, but I'm not going to spend time, like when you see someone on the side of the road, I'll give you $1, but I'm not going to spend time figuring out what you actually need.
Yeah.
That's my threshold. That's my level right there. I'm not suggesting personally, but that might be the level. When we can break free of those ideas of what my compassion threshold is, and give ourselves the benefit of the doubt that maybe I can be a whole lot more than what I gave myself credit, then that exchange becomes magnificently potentially enlightening, and those moments become life-changing, actually revolutionary to the kind of life that we want to live, because based on those direct experiences, our whole belief system will shift. Continents will move.
Providing the need that we didn't get as a child.
Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful. I want to ask, because there are different relationships that aren't right? So there is a difference between checking, am I the one sabotaging this relationship, or is it really not right for me? And I think that's important to talk about. So
absolutely. So this is a beautiful and important distinction to make. The way I look at it is right and wrong aren't concepts that fit into the greater reality. Those are concepts that were created in my mind based on my preferences and what will kind of bolster my belief system. I know what you mean. Should I stay in the relationship or should I get out?
Yeah.
Do I stay in this abusive situation and try to learn from it, or do I make a clear line of a boundary? Of course, this is a very practical question. But before those decisions are made, if we actually honor what was driving me to that situation originally, then when we approach that decision of whether to stay or go, it won't be a question of, oh my gosh, should I? It's very clear this is not attractive to me anymore. It's literally just like, I'm not interested. It's just like, it doesn't hold the weight that it once did.
Yeah.
Because the love that I was seeking was actually always available, but it was much closer than I thought. And then the vision of that person literally changes. You don't see them as someone that you would make yourself vulnerable to for no good reason, basically, because the promise of what was going to be received from that was felt as real before. It really felt like they were the answer to my longing.
Yeah.
And if I leave, I'm not going to get what that love, that feeling of intimacy and that feeling of really being seen. And so when we close our eyes and we meditate on the part of us that's actually asking to be seen, and we ourselves are able to see, and when we open our eyes again, that individual is not part of our dependency anymore. We don't see them as a crutch. We don't see them as a need. We don't have this desperation that would lead us to go into that room with them again. It's just literally a different world to us.
And we choose, do we want them around or don't we?
I wouldn't even say we choose. I would say it's very obvious.
Yeah.
They're just not attractive in the same way anymore. It's just not making sense. And that confidence of knowing that I'm lovable without them, or I'm seeable without them, or I'm deserving of love because I've loved myself, gives us a stance of clear seeing.
Yeah.
And we see, okay, this person's doing their best. They haven't done anything wrong. They were doing exactly what I needed them to do to help me find where I was believing that I didn't deserve love. I deserved abuse.
Yeah.
Because that's why they've been abusing me, is because I'm not suggesting we're to blame. I'm saying that we wouldn't stay in an abusive situation if there wasn't already a belief that I deserved it. Okay? Please don't misunderstand this. You shouldn't stay in the situation.
Yeah, of course. Yet,
if we leave that situation with our middle finger flying and saying, yeah, I got out of that one, and they're going to burn in wherever, because then we've missed the point, and we're going to meet the same person in another pair of jeans around the corner. And within a couple of years, they'll manifest exactly the same situation for us to learn from. So hopefully we get it. I know life
the first time.
What exactly?
Yeah.
So there's no right or wrong relationships. There's only a direction of delusion, thinking that they're the problem, and a direction of awakening or illumination, which is to shine a light of awareness inside and say, I love you. I've missed you. I'm sorry I've been distracted by this person out there. I know you're the one I actually am here for. And then that person inside becomes the answer.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that, because it really, these needs come from a sense of lack. So if we give ourselves what we're lacking, then we don't look for it outside of us. Beautiful. Well, Christopher, I am looking forward to our next conversation. This has given me a lot of things to work with in my own personal journey, and I am excited to anybody who might listen to this. Write this down, use it in your practices. Wherever you see a moment of struggle, really try to go back to this teaching and look inward. In the end, we're the only ones that can change ourselves. I mean, the only thing that we can really work on and change is ourselves. And I think that's a really great thing a great place to start. And also it's very empowering, because it means that we are able to change something.
And can I ask you?
Of course.
The other day, as this conversation started, the other day you had an experience of when those original belief structures were created. How has your interaction with the world been since you were able to integrate some of that knowledge? Any changes?
Well, it's been a process, I have to admit.
It's growing pains?
Yeah, it's something very big that came up. So I've gone through tears, a lot of them, a little bit of blame as well. And now I'm kind of in a place of observation, of just kind of stepping back, like you said, and really trying to look at things and not placing myself in the situation, but kind of looking at it and not defining things and saying it's like this, it's like that, I should be this, they should be that, just letting things kind of play out and
flow.
Yeah.
I'm using the word flow because I think that's one of our themes, that you've understood you can let life unfold. Yeah. That's what I'm hearing, is that it's a shift. It's a major reorientation to the way life can be. When we come from a place of believing that we have to adjust or manipulate in any way the situation or ourselves for it to work out. Yeah. We get in the habit of thinking that it won't work out if we're not manipulating or even subconsciously navigating or negotiating. And so there's a massive reorienting process. And if we're willing to go through that process, as you are so gracefully sharing with us, thank you. I think that observer, that clarity of being willing to let life show up rather than stuck in identification with that story. Yeah. Great massive potential is already available. So yes. Freedom. Yeah, and I know it doesn't feel like that right now, maybe yet, or I don't know. But,
no, it doesn't. Not yet.
But I assure you, how it's been about a few days, something like that. I assure you that the recalibration process, though it's difficult, will align you with true north.
Yeah. I do feel that I'm processing this experience differently than I have in the past. And that already gives me a lot of hope.
Perfect. Yeah. That's really what it's about. Showing up in a new way. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher, I love this conversation. Thank you so much for this. And I'll see you in the next one. And
pleasure.
At dinner.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, after this time to nurture your mind and your spirit, we invite you to take a moment to consider others. A kind wish might come to mind. Know that what we learn becomes more valuable when we apply it and share it with others. So share this episode on Instagram stories, tag Yandara and I, or share with a loved one so that more people can benefit from it. Our hope is that the search will lead you home to who you already are, to what was always there. We'll be back next week with more inspiration, honest conversation, and insight into the energetic world around us. Thank you for listening and watching.